Four-star Jaylen Gilchrist could be the next huge Terps commit.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys all for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you for all of the everydayers who make Locked On Terps their first listen every day. I see some of you guys commenting basically every single day, and I appreciate that you guys leave comments and that you guys leave likes and all those different things, and the channel has grown a good bit. So thank you guys for that, and thank you guys for making us part of every day. So the Terps could land a humongous commitment from four-star Jaylen Gilchrist, who is on commitment watch, who is supposed to be making his commitment on August 3rd, which I believe is Saturday. So we have a couple more days until Jaylen Gilchrist makes his commitment, and his recruiting process has been interesting. I don't know exactly what will happen. There's been some strong indicators on South Carolina being a favorite for him, and Maryland definitely being in the mix, but he did release his top three a couple of weeks ago with Georgia, South Carolina, and Maryland. And this kid could put our 2025 class over the top. He's an offensive lineman from the Virginia area, so kind of the DMV area. It says the school he goes to, I guess, is in the Virginia Beach area, so not really considered the DMV, but still close enough, closer than South Carolina, closer than Georgia for sure. But it's interesting now that we are in the conversation for Jaylen Gilchrist, and I'm telling you, getting guys like this up front, a four-star player that's ranked top 100 in his class, specifically on 247 ranked 96th ranked nationally, and the 5th ranked inside offensive lineman, and the 4th ranked player in Virginia. So being able to get a guy like Jaylen Gilchrist on our team could make a humongous difference in our 2025 class and could be the next huge commit to the Terrapins. And the reason I say it's so important to land these players up front like Jaylen Gilchrist is because the biggest difference between the upper echelon teams in the Big Ten and to the next teams down, like the Marylands right now, let's say like a Purdue or like even a Michigan State, the difference between Michigan and Michigan State, or the difference between, let's say, Ohio State versus a team like Maryland, the biggest difference is the guys on the line. It's the guys up front. And we're not going to have what Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State or Oregon has up front. But for us to continue to improve, to continue to get better, it's not about the skill positions, in my opinion. It's about landing some of these really high-level four-star offensive line recruits. We already have one in Bryce Jenkins, who I think is going to be extremely good for Maryland. I don't even know yet if he's supposed to play offensive or defensive line. That still isn't 100% clear, but he's ranked on the composite ranking. He's ranked 280th ranked nationally, and a four-star, third best player in DC. 247 has him as a defensive lineman, but other websites have him as an offensive lineman. I don't really know what Bryce Jenkins is going to do. But having two guys, Jaylen Gilchrist and Bryce Jenkins, that are both four stars potentially in our 2025 class up front along the offensive or in defensive line. In terms of Bryce Jenkins, we don't know exactly where he'll play, but having two guys up front that are four-star level prospects could be huge for the Terps. I'm telling you, it makes it a lot easier on everybody else if your guys up front are really good players. And landing a guy like Jaylen Gilchrist could make it a lot easier on Malik Washington, who our 4-star quarterback in the 2025 class, can make it a lot easier on, let's say, if Zymeer Smith is playing some running back, or Iverson Howard, two guys that are ranked as 4 stars on different websites that both have a chance to play running back, can make it a lot easier on those types of guys. So when I look at Jaylen Gilchrist, I say he would be a huge addition to our 2025 class, because it would spring us from we're around 30th right now into definitely a top 25 class again, where we were a couple weeks ago. But also it would just help a ton when we actually get to the football games. Having a guy like that up front, we haven't had guys like Jaylen Gilchrist up front that are potential real like NFL types of guys that can be elite in the Big Ten. We haven't had many of those types of guys. So I think landing Jaylen Gilchrist could be humongous for our 2025 class. Now it's interesting. South Carolina is the favorite right now, and I don't know exactly how hard we'll have to. I don't know exactly what we'll have to do to be able to land him. It does seem like everywhere has him projected to go to South Carolina. But if you remember, a week or so ago, he was talking to Malik Washington, 4-star Maryland commit quarterback, on Twitter and saying, should I shock the world at Malik Washington? And so I really do believe that Maryland's in the mix. I haven't seen him tweeting stuff about South Carolina, and Coach Loxley has won a couple of battles against South Carolina when it comes to recruiting, whether it's Barham or Braden Lee. We've won a couple, and it's a little bit of a recruiting rivalry brewing, and I think we do have a solid chance at landing him. I'd be lying to you guys if I said, if I had to predict, I'd say Maryland. I wouldn't. I would say South Carolina, because that's what the 3 predictions that are embedded in 247 have him going to. But right now, those are just the South Carolina insiders. The 247 insiders haven't put in their crystal ball that I have seen, and I'm looking at the website right now. They haven't put in a crystal ball for him to go to South Carolina like Brian Dawn or some of the other guys. But the South Carolina insiders do believe that they have him. 2 of them put a medium confidence on it. So he's not guaranteed to South Carolina. Maryland's very much in the mix, and Georgia probably is. Maryland's closest to home. I also think you have a chance to play right away. I also think our program is just in a better culture spot than South Carolina. So I do think we have a real shot at landing Jaylen Gilchrist. It's definitely not like for sure. Like when we were talking about Malik Washington, Zymeer Smith, Bryce Jenkins, those guys were heavily projected to go to Maryland, and it looked like it was always going to be Maryland. But for Jaylen Gilchrist, we don't know exactly how it's going to go. South Carolina seems to be the lead right now, but Maryland's very much in it. And if the Terps can land them, it would be humongous, huge for the Terps 2025 class, and would definitely solidify the 2025 class as one of the best classes Coach Loxley has had under at his time at the University of Maryland. So I'm excited to see what can happen, but I think that landing Jaylen Gilchrist could be absolutely huge for the Terps. The more I think about it, Maryland has a lot of depth problems at different positions and question marks. I will talk about that after this ad from the Gametime app and Factor. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute, like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets is hard? I have been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets to all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of an event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute seats and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Warmer, sunnier days are on their way, and Factor's got your back for them. Get ready to soak up the sun with our easy, no-fuss meals that take just minutes to prepare. With options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and our chef-crafted meals help you hit your wellness goal before the summer hits. They're fresh, never frozen, and dietitian approved, so you can enjoy nutritious and delicious meals even on your busiest days. Today's the perfect day to start a healthier routine, so why wait? Dive in now with 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. You always have new flavors to explore. Crush your wellness goals this May with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Head over to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com. Maryland's depth could absolutely be an issue this year. You never wish injuries on anybody. You never do. But in terms of college football, in terms of the NFL, in terms of football in general, it's reasonable to expect that you're going to have some injuries across your roster. That's just the way it is. And I don't want to say that Maryland's going to have a bunch of injuries this year. I'm not saying that, but there's a pretty good chance that we have some injuries this year for Maryland football. And whatever the case is, depth is needed for different reasons, whether it's injuries, people not playing well. It can just be football's a tiring spot. You're just going to need rotations at certain position groups. And Maryland's a team that loves to rotate different guys in and out of games. And so I look at it and I was thinking about it this morning. I was going through some of the position groups and I was like, we don't really have much depth there. We don't have much depth there either. Not much depth there either. And in terms of depth, it's interesting because it's is it that we don't have a lot of depth, or is it guys that haven't proven themselves yet? We're not a program where our second string is going to be a freshman 5-star that is just waiting his turn. We're no Bama. We're no Ohio State. We're not like that. We're not Georgia. But still, depth, we still need depth, and it's still important to have depth. And I felt better about probably our depth last year as a team than I do about this year. I honestly think this year could be a little bit concerning with our current depth at some of the spots when I really am looking at it. Just starting off with some of the offensive line depth, I don't really trust a lot of the offensive lines, a lot of the second string. I just don't. A lot of them are guys that I feel like if they had to start, I don't know what it would look like. And I'm not even sure about our starting five across the offensive lines with guys like Alan Herron, transfer, Alaba, transfer, Josh Kaltenberger, transfer, Isaiah Wright, transfer. Kyle Long is projected to start at guard. He's the only one that's returning. So I'm looking at him saying we have a bunch of new transfers up front. And then the backup offensive line, whether it's Marcus Dumerville, who's played a little bit, Andre Roy, who's played a little bit. There's some guys definitely, whether maybe it's some of the freshmen like Orion Howerton or Therese Davis. I'm not saying those guys aren't going to be good players eventually, but I think it's reasonable for me to be concerned about the depth up front. And depth along the offensive line is one of the most underrated things about your football team that a lot of people don't always think about. A lot of people don't actually are like, we need the depth up front when talking about it, because not a lot of people are going to talk about it. But when I think about it, it's a very much a thing, in my opinion, to say depth up front is extremely important because you're almost certain to have some injuries up front along the offensive line. And for a Maryland team, we don't know our combinations yet. So having depth and having guys that can fill in if someone's not playing well is also important. But I also, staying on the offensive side of the ball, I was like, okay, the offensive line, we've kind of known that's been kind of not a problem the last couple of years, but definitely something that we would like to improve. And so I'm like, okay, the offensive line, some depth problems. But then I'm like, tight end room too. When I think about it, there's depth problems in the tight end. Outside of Preston Howard and Dylan Wade, there's not a whole lot of guys that we have confidence in. AJ Sininsky is a really good player. I actually talked to him the other day. I saw him while I was out, and he's a really good kid. I like him as a third tight end, but I'm not in love with him or Lerone Husband in terms of pass catching. I really like Preston Howard and Dylan Wade, but what if one or both of those guys have to miss time? Then what does our tight end room look like? That's a little bit concerning, in my opinion. I think that's a little bit scary that we don't have much depth in that room at all. Like, there's not really anybody. There's there's no veteran presence, which is again concerning. I thought we were going to add someone in the transfer portal or something like that, but we didn't. And so it's like, okay, Preston and Dylan Wade have to stay healthy. That's something that's going to be really important for this year because we've liked to use our tight ends in the past. Coach Loxley likes using those guys. And so I'm looking at it and I'm saying the tight end room, the offensive line, definitely depth concerns there. And then I would say running back and wide receiver, there's plenty of different guys that can play. But then I go to the defensive line, and I'm like, I'd say there's depth concerns along the defensive line. Jordan Phillips and Tommy King Basotes starting at both of the inside defensive tackle spots. And yeah, I like those guys there, but it's like behind them, it's a little bit concerning. Sure, Isaac Bunyan and Tajay Johnson, good solid players, but I just don't know about how strong our rotation of players will be up front. And then now I look at it and I say across the linebacker room, I have depth concerns there. We lost two players that played a lot in terms of Gote and Barham. And so I'm looking at it, I'm saying, okay, Hippolyte's left. With Hippolyte and Caleb Wheatland are left, and there's not much outside of that. And Maryland loves to rotate. They love to play different guys. And so I'm saying Michael Harris, who was a 4-star in a lot of websites when he came in to College Park, he's going to have to step up. And Daniel Wingate also is going to have to step up. I don't know about the depth in those different spots. And then we keep on moving down the roster. We keep on moving. We keep on looking at different things. And we say the corner room, I'm not even sure right now about our starters, never mind just the depth in our cornerback room. And it's a little bit concerning there. Yeah, Perry Fisher and Jalen Husky projected to start. But outside of that, it's like, okay, Lionel Whitaker's played some. Chance Harley's played something but there's not a whole lot of guys that I'm like, I feel confident with if they're out. And sure, there's some freshman corners, Braden Lee, some other guys that I like, but still young guys. And I'm just not sure about the depth. Same thing in the safety room. I like Brandon Jacobs, but if Dante or Glendon got hurt, what would happen? Would it be Brandon Jacobs right away? I don't know exactly. I think this team has depth concerns at basically almost every position group you look at: corner, safety, linebacker, defensive line, tight end, offensive line. And so I think Maryland football team needs to stay healthy this year. I think that's a thing for the Terps. And so I mean, a lot of college football teams are going to have depth concerns, and you see who steps up in spots. You never know, but I just think that it's a point that has to be made that Maryland's depth could be in question this year. And I think last year there was more depth. I had more confidence in some of our backup guys than I do this year overall. Like, just for a quick example, tight end room. I really liked Corey Dyches as our 1, Preston Howard as our 2, and then we had two really talented freshmen, Dylan Wade as our 4th guy, and then we had Rico Walker as our 3rd guy, 4-star recruit. So we had 4 guys that could realistically play, where this year we only have 2. There's just different examples where I'm just not sure about the depth along our team, and it's a little bit scary. A lot of guys transferred out in the secondary. That's a big part of not having as much depth, but I do think it's a little bit scary. Former Terp DJ Moore gets absolutely paid a lot of money. I will talk about that after this ad from eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships, and is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you powered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride or die every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Maryland star, or former Maryland star, I should say, DJ Moore gets paid a lot of money to stay in Chicago, which I think is something I did want to talk about, because whenever we have guys in the NFL that are excellent, that have proven to be excellent, that have put up many good seasons, we got to acknowledge them. We're not like some of these other teams where we're just going to have a ton of guys in the NFL. And so when we have guys in the NFL that have put up really good seasons, we got to acknowledge it. And DJ Moore is one of those guys who has last year had a career year, his best year yet. Even with a lot of people think Justin Fields wasn't a great quarterback, but he had a career year with 17. He played every single game, 96 receptions, 164 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Pretty much led in every single category that he had last year. And so I look at DJ Moore and I say, it's a point where at Maryland football, you can use a guy like this, a guy like DJ Moore, a guy like Stephon Diggs, and say, look at what Maryland, it's a recruiting pitch. And that's why it's a big deal for Maryland football. It's a recruiting pitch. When you have receivers come in and whatever they do on their official visits, I don't know exactly how it works, but you show them DJ Moore and you show them Stephon Diggs, you put on their wall and you put their paycheck or whatever, and you show those two guys that are really all pro types of talent at the receiver position, and you say, if you go to Maryland, you can turn out maybe like one of these guys in terms of guys that have gotten paid, guys that have making Pro Bowls, guys that have been some of the best receivers in football. You can put them on the wall and say, these two guys are really good football players. And if you stay in the DMV, if you come to Maryland, you have a chance to be like these two guys. And so my point is that DJ Moore, I'm so happy for DJ Moore getting the contract extension that he deserves. A really nice contract. 4 years, $110 million, $82.6 million guaranteed. Like, that's a pretty nice little pay job for DJ Moore. And he has a chance to have another huge year now with Caleb Williams, who I'm going to tell you guys, I think is better than Justin Fields. And the Bears do too, or they went out and traded Justin Fields. But I think when you look at it as a Maryland perspective, you got to make sure you're emphasizing that. And even if they're not receivers, you can still show that when you have a guy like that. Like, going to the NFL and having NFL talent and having guys get paid in the NFL at a position like a premium position like the receivers, which we've done a pretty good job with, I think that's something you could hang up. That's something that you can really hang your hat on and say, we've gotten guys to the NFL. We have different guys that have been on NFL rosters, but not only are they been on rosters, they've succeeded in the NFL. And you can do that too if you come to the University of Maryland. And I'm talking specifically with receiver recruits, but you can do that with everybody on this team. So I think they will do that. And I think getting a guy like DJ Moore paid is huge for Maryland football, because they can kind of advertise that, as well as just, it's big because the former Maryland player got paid, and that doesn't always happen. And so it's pretty cool to see what he's been able to do as a Panther first, but now a Bear. And then I was looking back at his recruiting profile. It also shows how you can develop guys. DJ Moore wasn't a top prospect, from Pennsylvania, ranked as the 53rd best receiver in his class, 12th ranked in the state of Pennsylvania. And he definitely wasn't anything special as a recruit, just a 3-star. So showing this, even a 3-star that you might really like, there's ways to use this leverage when guys commit. So I think that's pretty cool. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.